Hello and welcome. I'm so honored and privileged to be among these esteemed guests for today's very special webinar. This is the HBCU program of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. We are so honored and privileged to present to you From Campus to Career, Corporate Readiness for College Students. So I want to give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. Let me start with myself. My name is Chana Lawson. My pronouns are she, her, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Associate Director of the HBCU program here at the Human Rights Campaign. I want to start with Leslie. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I'm Leslie Hall. I'm the Director of the HBCU program. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
I know that's right. By all means, Rachel, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Flores. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of University and Diversity Recruiting at PVH, which is the parent company of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger.
Awesome, awesome. And last but certainly not least, Darwin, Master of Evolution, please introduce yourself.
Ha 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 ha. It's so great to be here. Darwin Thompson. I am the Director of Corporate Giving. I use pronouns he, him, his, or anything respectful. And I've been at Gilead Sciences 5 years.
I love that. Anything respectful. Well, thank you all for giving your introduction, sharing your pronouns, and also sharing your job descriptions. So kind of talk about, well, actually, before I even get into your roles at your positions, what is a guiding quote that you all use as you move through the community or through your respective communities every day? And feel free to go in the same order as you were before.
Oh, okay, we're going to flip this order, but
we can flip it on the next one.
But I can share a guiding quote that I have is Darwin might actually be familiar with this quote, but it's your crown has already been paid for. Put it on your head and wear it.
Love that.
Yeah, I received that. Thank you.
That's a Morehouse quote.
I know that's right.
So mine is more of a mantra lately. I feel like it's come to fruition more when I go throughout my career more than when I started my career, but it's you are exactly where you need to be. And so that's just a reminder, like if things aren't going to plan, there's a reason you're going through that. There's a reason you're going through those experiences, whether it's to learn or to grow or to even share your experiences with others as you learn. So
I very much appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. And Darwin, what's your guiding quote?
So I'm sort of overachiever, so I sort of have two.
Okay,
which is okay. So I think the one thing I always think about is a mantra is that everything starts with a yes. From promotions to getting in the door, it has to start with a yes. And then on the other flip side is like be thankful for doors that are closed sometimes, because if the door is closed, then you may not have wanted to go through it in the first place.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Thank you. Oh, man. Oh, gosh, kicking the door in. Okay, so moving forward, let's talk a little bit about where you work and what is your role. Tell us about your educational background, your professional background, and what is it like in the day-to-day on your job? And we'll go in the reverse this time and start with Darwin.
Yeah, so I'm a graduate of Morehouse College, class of 2008. Undergrad degree was in sociology.
Yes.
Similar to Leslie, I did the first sort of 10 years of my career in nonprofit. So everything from an outreach worker, specifically in HIV prevention, from an outreach worker, program director, all the way up to the executive director that I spent 5 years in Atlanta. I currently work at Gilead Sciences. I am the Director of Corporate Giving. And pretty much what I do is I oversee all of our corporate donations in the US in our virology division. And so it's if you know anything about Gilead, we are the #1 funder for HIV-related programs in the world. We give about $500 million away, and so globally. And so I get the privilege of working in the U.S. And really being a thought partner with our leadership around supporting community-based organizations, thinking about where our impact should be from our strategic initiatives. I manage our work within transgender communities, our HIV and aging portfolio, as well as our work around ending the HIV epidemic through our Getting to Zero initiative. So I guess a day in the life of Darwin is I talk to a lot of organizations around projects and proposals that they want funding for. I take our grants through the entire life cycle from submission to contracting, working with our internal review committee. I plan our engagement opportunities, but I also work cross-functionally across the teams at Gilead to ensure that we are working to end the HIV epidemic for everyone everywhere. So that's sort of, a high-level overview of my role and who I am as a person and my educational background.
I love that. A Day in the Life of Darwin. That's a book right there. Rachel, please tell us about with the wonderful work that you do at PVH.
Yeah, that's great work, Darwin. Impressive. So I'm originally from Nebraska. So I went to University of Nebraska at Omaha. I'm a first generation college student. So I worked full time, put myself through school, got a scholarship. It took me 5 years to finish, but super proud. Got my business degree in management and HR, and I've been in HR my entire professional career. So for the past 10 years or so, I've been focused on leading university recruiting efforts, university relations, and then usually running some sort of early careers program within the companies that I work for. So I've worked for a variety of industries. I started my career in consumer packaged goods at a food manufacturing company. I then transitioned into financial services at a brokerage firm, and then moved into an HR company. And now I'm at PVH, which is a completely different industry in the fashion and retail space. So it's been fun kind of getting to use all of my transferable skills in HR and recruiting, and then just continue the learning journey of the other industries I've been in. And so in my day job, I get to visit campuses, I get to go to career fairs, interact with students, faculty, student groups. We also, part of my role is diversity recruitment strategy. So working with different organizations that would focus and allow our application pool to be a more diverse. And so that's been really fun as well.
Awesome. Right. Go for it, Leslie.
Yes, and so I will soon be a triple alum of two HBCUs. I did my bachelor's in sociology at Bowie State University, master's of social work from Howard University, and soon come May, PhD in higher leadership and policy from Howard University. And so my entire career has really been in and around nonprofit work and higher ed. I started out in the annual giving and development office at Bowie State. Then I went to be a development officer at this large nonprofit in DC called Sasha Bruce Youth Work. It's around homeless youth. And then I came to the Human Rights Campaign, and I've been doing this work for going on 8 years now. So day in a life, I would say it's really kind of all over the place, because HRC is not a higher ed organization proper. We have several programs that engage with educational institutions, including my own, but we are primarily a political organization. And so some days we can be down at the Hill doing things, or out in the community organizing, or we'll be on campuses supporting the leadership development of students, and engaging with HBCU presidents on creating a more inclusive campus climate for their LGBTQ students. So it just runs the gamut, and that's probably why I've been here so long. It's every day is very different.
I love that. And I thank you for sharing, and congratulations again on your work in your doctoral program. It's really profound, prophetic to witness. It really is. I was sitting here looking at the questions, and I'm like, do I want to jump around? Because this is just really remarkable. I want to kind of start with zeroing in on the LGBTQ experience, right? And how do we discern, or do you think it's necessary to even disclose your LGBTQ status, or for anyone else to disclose that status? And how do you discern when it's safe to do so? So whoever wants to start, I want to start with Darwin, or?
I mean, I'm happy to go, because I think I'm the only one that's not on mute at the moment.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think it's all about when you're ready to disclose, right? I think At Gilead, I mean, we have a number of ERGs, employee resource groups, that is really dedicated to an individual's experience. So I'm a part of our Proud Alliance, which is our ERG for LGBT Black gay individuals, as well as I'm a part of our Black ERG. I didn't disclose my sexuality during my interview. I mean, obviously, the sort of work I've done, it's sort of, people already knew. And so I didn't have to. I found it interesting that when I got into the company, obviously I worked at this large corporate company, and I had to disclose over and over again because some people just didn't know, and I was like, "Wow, you didn't? Okay." But I felt comfortable because at the end of the day, I felt like I worked in an environment where they had tools in place to sort of support, me as an individual. On the flip side, I mean, I work for a very progressive company, and I think that there are some companies, especially in corporate America, that may not be as progressive as the company that I work for. So I think you have to determine, a couple things when thinking about disclosing. One, does their values align with your values? Our core values, inclusion and diversity, is one of our core values. So it was a checkbox for me. Two, there is all of our employees have to go through unconscious bias training. So that's another checkbox for me. So we're sort of checking out biases at the door, at least getting a better understanding of what they are. So in a small order, does the company have sort of things in place to sort of navigate that you can navigate your experience in a way that you'll feel safe to disclose and be included? And so that is, so it's really an own individual's journey and timeline. But I would say that the company has to have sort of those things in place so you can feel safe to do so.
Thank you for sharing that.
I
was gonna say, Leslie, you kind of have a cheat code considering where you work, but
but I mean, it's very interesting. So, and I didn't disclose in none of my jobs, even when I interviewed at HRC, if you believe it or not. So, matriculating through a HBCU, my career development had been very conservative, molded very conservatively. So it was, clean shaven face, nice tailored hair, keep your resume to the facts and to the experiences. You don't have to have to put all these sorts of things. And while I'm not that much older than a lot of the students that are graduating now, putting the LGBTQ club on your resume wasn't really that popular to do. And so I was always encouraged not to do that. We're in a different time and it's a different space. And I do want to echo what Darwin shared. You have to do your research about the company or organization that you are interested in joining. They are their own ecosystems, their own cultures, it's its own community. And you have to try to, do your best due diligence to see what life is like in that company for a person of your identity. I didn't do any of that. I just kind of saw the job, applied for it. I would kind of size up the person who interviewed me. I'm like, well, if you're nasty to me in the interview, you're gonna be nasty to me when I get to work. And so I kind of did that. Nowadays, we have a lot of different tools at your disposal to kind of support your college search. Because I work at HRC, I have to plug the Corporate Equality Index, which kind of rates companies based on their level of LGBTQ inclusion. And that is a resource and a tool that folks can use to kind of gauge where they should even start their searches. If you're starting at 100, that's a good thing. You don't probably want to start at places other than that. But everyone that a lot of folks that are listening to this webcast are graduated from schools in the South, and maybe institutes, businesses and organizations may not make it to the 100 or whatever like that. But it's all about doing your due diligence about the company that you are interested in working for.
Excellent. An excellent plug with the Corporate Equality Index too. I think that's a really powerful tool that not a lot of folks know about, or not enough, in my opinion. So that's really wonderful. Rachel, please, you are the DEI goddess of your organization. So please share a little bit about your experience and how you help folks navigate that.
Sure. So I think from an HR standpoint, we look at it a couple of ways. So there is a trend for organizations to actually have a questionnaire where you can self-identify multiple identities, right? And there is a trend for LGBTQIA plus disclosure as well to add that. So normally it's just gender, race. Sometimes you see disability and veteran status, and there's a trend to sort of add additional questions. And from an HR standpoint, I think a lot of companies are hoping to gather this information more so they can understand their applicant pool. Like, are they getting diversity within their application pool? Can they create programs and resources around getting more in diversity in their applicant pool? And then actually at PVH, we recently went through our entire employee population went through a self-disclosure process, a self-ID campaign, to allow us to, again, create more programs and resources internally to service, the needs of our associates. So that's, I think, an important factor when we're looking at all of this is understanding, why the companies may be asking for that information, what they intend to do with it, and then who has access to it. And is it more anonymized aggregate data, maybe can't be attributed back to an individual to help you feel more comfortable in disclosing through that process.
There we go. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And I think all of you kind of touched on something that was very important, and particularly you, Darwin, you said it very explicitly, the unconscious or subconscious bias that occurs in the workplace or even in academia, and how we have to learn how to navigate that and kind of look at subtle cues, like what does this organization have that shows me that they're not going to allow this to take place? And I think that part of it is also too, for me, when I was looking for a job, I was really old school with it, word of mouth and having a really strong network. I think it's important for college students to know that the connections and the bridges that you build today are really going to nurture you for years to come. And I say that as someone who works for someone I went to school with, so like when I started working at NIH, my mother worked there for many years. So I went there to the Delta Foundation. My line sister I was very fortunate in having a good rapport with her and then her supervisor. And even when I was doing repro work, and now here at HRC, knowing that Leslie had been there for 7 years, I was like, well, Leslie's not going to hang around for 7 years at a place he don't like, So and watching him quite literally build this program from the ground up, it was just really prophetic to witness. And I said to myself, like, it'll be really cool to work there. And here I am. So, you just never know how the connections you make in your like teens and early 20s are really going to carry you for the rest of your life. So thank you all for sharing that. And let's see, what do we want to talk about? So we kind of touched on experiences and realities for LGBTQ folks. And I really want to put it more in the context of living in a post-COVID society, because I think COVID and all of the domino effect from it really exposed a lot of errors in a variety of different industries, right? So how do you navigate your profession in a post-COVID society? And I mean, whoever, Leslie, you got that look on your face like you got something to say.
Well, no, I'll just start. And
okay.
COVID was kind of rough for me because I was such a in your face type of people, like I got to touch you and be in front of you type of person. Mm-hmm. We were doing college and university work. And so our work took place on the campuses, and campuses were shutting down and students were going home. And even when they returned, campuses still had a very conservative approach to like, we don't want no visitors. If you're not, a student here or live on campus, then stay home. And so we had to really innovate around how can we leverage technology to still achieve a lot of the work that we had to do. I'm just sharing a little bit of like what it's really like to work in the world. Like we had grants from companies and organizations that are like, these deliverables still have to be met. And so you better figure it out. And that was, for me, probably the most challenging is being able to innovate in real time and augment your direction. I think I have grown since then because of that experience, but it was not pleasant when we were in the top of 2020 when we were going through it. It really wasn't. And so for us, for me, it was just about, being nimble, being flexible and versatile in your work and leaning on your employee, your not your employees, leaning on your team or your colleagues to kind of help you through some of those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, Leslie. I think what I would add is that in like this, and I probably shouldn't say this, but like in this post-COVID world, like I've done things like block my calendar for, personal time, right? I think before COVID, we were trying to jam these meetings, in 8 hours and I work in a very meeting heavy culture. And so, I will block my time on Fridays for, personal time. I have audio only Fridays because a lot of what we do is Zoom. And so, I also take, personal health days from being on camera, like, and I'm very okay with telling someone like, I'm just not camera ready today. For whatever reason. And so I take that because it's like, if you have to do what works best for you. And so that was sort of like how I challenge and check my mental health was, audio only Fridays, blocking off personal time, and really understanding that we do work very differently now. So, if I get up at 5 a.m., maybe I'll work from 5 a.m. to noon, and then I'll take the rest of the day for myself because, I didn't have any meetings. And so just really working, I work very differently now than I did during COVID, before COVID, because, I have to take care of myself and I sit in front of a screen for most of the day.
Yeah, I'll add, so it's interesting is I decided to join PVH at the top of 2020 when the pandemic hit New York City and everything shut down. And I was like, what in the world did I get myself into? Because, COVID really impacted the retail industry. All the stores shut down, retailers didn't really know what to do. We had to figure out how to work remotely in the corporate office environment. So we're sort of past all of that right now. And now we're really focused on like the hybrid environment and what does that look like and how many days do you need to be in the office and does it need to be structured? And we're trying to figure out a lot of that right now, but you guys both touched on a couple of things that I'm really proud at PVH of what we've been able to do is really put our employees first, put mental health first. Darwin, we actually have meeting-free Fridays at the whole company. And so we love taking advantage of that. We have things like You Matter moments once a month where we can take, 2 to 3 hours out of our day and do whatever works for us, whether that's exercise, go get your nails done, whatever you want to do. That can feed sort of your personal health journey there. We also have access to things like Headspace and, being able to focus on meditation or whatever, again, works for you. So we've got a lot of cool resources. And then we're now figuring out how to like create fun experiences in the office to drive some of that associate engagement. So I'm excited, for this the new hybrid experience and stuff that we're in.
That's awesome. I'm much like Leslie, where the vast majority of my professional experience is in nonprofit. So it's very cool to hear about for-profit corporations doing this type of stuff and really prioritizing holistic health because they're not mutually exclusive, right? If your personal life is in shambles, it's kind of hard to focus on work, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really happy to hear that your companies are taking that seriously. So this is another question that I wanted to ask, and I think, Rachel, this will be particularly profound for you as a first-gen college student. So I want to start with you, but what are some things that you wish you knew in college as you began your job searching process and sought your first workplace opportunity post-graduation? And I want to shout out our fellow Kadesha because she's the one who helped me, who prompted me to ask this question.
Yeah, such a great question. And you can imagine, so again, I went to school in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, very much smaller than New York City. And so I think at that point, I didn't realize the value of an internship. I did actually do a couple of internships when I was in school. I tried to work through my advisor to kind of find those. I don't know that our career services team was as robust as maybe as I would have liked it.
Mhm.
But I didn't realize in the HR field like how valuable that is. And it's one of those catch-22 things. Like you need experience, but you can't get experience until you get it until someone gives you a shot, sort of thing. So
Right.
doing those internships are really, really important, not only in HR, but also in other fields. So luckily I got them, but I wish I would have known how valuable they really were. And then I think, now that I've been in my career 15 plus years, I know what the right things are to look for an employer. And we kind of touched on that earlier, but like the values of the company matter so much, and what types of inclusion and diversity and equity practices they have. And do they have employee resource groups? Can I find community within that company, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later too. So those are all things I wish I would have known up front, but obviously you can grow into those and figure those out along the way too.
I see you turn your mic off, Darwin, so you got something real powerful to say.
I don't know if it's powerful. I mean, I want to give Rachel sort of 2 snaps for that internships. When I was at Morehouse, had I known internships, my career probably would have went a totally different direction, right? But I didn't do it. I think the other thing, like when we think about sort of like advice I would give someone around starting in corporate or trying to start in corporate is, take advantage of your career services, right? And if they're not as robust as you'd like it to be, challenge them on making it more robust, right? I think I think that is an underutilized resource on campuses that students don't use, even when we go on campuses to do health fairs and sort of stuff like that. And also career fairs, it's definitely underutilized. The other thing I would venture to say, and I've reviewed a number of resumes when looking for internships, is invest in someone to really edit and provide feedback on your resume. I think it's very competitive. And what I often say is everyone is a valedictorian when they're interviewing for this job, right? So if I'm looking at resumes or I'm looking at other things and your resume doesn't stand out, your experience could be amazing through your internships and some of the work study work that you've done. But if it doesn't convey on the resume, we get hundreds and hundreds of resumes. So, we may go to the next person, you're the most qualified candidate. So that is one of the things that I would say is really invest in, someone if you're not good at it, to invest in your resume so that you can really share your experience.
Yeah, I want to echo both of what Rachel and Darwin said. When I was in undergrad, I couldn't afford to do unpaid internships. So like if I did anything, it needed to be paid. And so I did work all 4 years of my college career, but serving jobs, bartending jobs, because I just couldn't. I ain't have it like that to go work for an office, which is really profound experience that you need. Like Rachel said, it's a catch-22. Like if you don't have the experience, you can't get it. And it's like, so nowadays, I think folks are more intentional about paid internships, or there's a movement towards paying folks to kind of do the work of an intern. In terms of advice, I would have really liked some advice around negotiating salaries. I have been not today, but like even when I started HRC, I was very appreciative, oh, thank you for this salary, and I had to really flex this muscle of like, no, girl, like put what the type of work that you do and what you're capable of. And so ask for what you want, because they aren't the only place in the world that can hire you. And so I would really look for reading books or look for mentors or other folks that can teach you, because it's a skill set also. Like you need to have some confidence in there, to help you negotiate a salary that is reasonable, but also, really supports your value and what your experience and what you bring to the table, I think is really important. And that was something that I did not learn in college. I didn't learn in my master's program. I really kind of learned that on the job, seeing other people that didn't look like me getting salaries that, you know, was a little bit unbalanced. And so I had to learn very quickly about the art of negotiation.
Sean, if I
All
could,
the mics off on that one.
yeah, if I want to add on to that. For one, like, we need to stop with the unpaid internships. If companies are still doing that, you really need to figure out how to pay your people. That is something that I'm really passionate about. And honestly, I didn't, coming to the fashion and retail space, I didn't realize how prevalent that was, particularly in like maybe smaller brands. I do think the larger brands and the parent companies like PVH, you know, we do pay all of our interns. We don't do any sort of unpaid internships, but I know that still happens, you know, in some industries. So I'm super passionate about that. And Leslie, know your worth. You know, that is really important in your negotiation skills too. And I do think maybe I'm at an advantage because I'm in HR, and so I sort of know, you know, how to navigate this a little bit already, but doing your research certainly helps kind of knowing your worth too. So.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, what I will add is that I think that's spot on, is that if a company makes you an offer, right, they always can go up, right? And that's just the bottom line, right? So always go back with a counter offer. I think when I came to corporate America, to Leslie's point, when I got my offer, I was like, man, this is more money I ever seen in my life. And, you know, I just signed on the dotted line and didn't negotiate. But when I started to bring in other employees, especially employees that look like me, and the advice that I got, it was to always go back and counter, and, you know, so never take the first offer. If they want you, they will either meet you in the middle, or they will increase, but definitely always counter.
And I'll add, I think from an early career standpoint, sometimes that can be really difficult because maybe you don't have the leverage that you need to, you know, warrant more money. And so, you know, in experiences I've had when I've been working with students, sometimes I'll just tell them up front, look, this is not negotiable. This is the best offer. This is the competitive rate. Or like we do have sort of like a standard rate across the board that we're paying all incoming, you know, analysts or all incoming, you know, specialists, whatever that might be, all incoming interns. And so I am more upfront with that. So they don't either waste their time or, you know, think there is an opportunity to negotiate. But certainly as you get further in your career, yes, you should be negotiating every single time.
Absolutely.
And I just had one more because that was good.
Please.
That was good. Because I agree with that, because I've had folks come to me with like 2 years experience and you think it's about to be like pie in the sky and it's not given. But I have also learned that, yeah, okay, you may not can meet me on the salary, but you can give me an extra week of vacation, or you know, give me, you know, like there are other things that you can really look for. You have to, it's all about knowing that organization, knowing that company. And if we can't meet in the middle, because, you know, I want to work here, so I'm not going to, you know, hit you too hard, but you can give me an extra week of vacation in December or something like that. We can work that out. Like, there are other ways that you can make some things happen for yourself, for sure.
Absolutely. You all shared some very powerful insight, and I've even received it as someone who's, you know, moving up in the corporate ladder, so to speak. But I think that that's very powerful. And what you said about paid internships, oh my gosh, Rachel. Darwin, I felt like you had something you was going to say because you was off mute and then you went back. Okay. But yeah, I think that that's what you all said is very prophetic, and knowing your worth, salary negotiation, which I think is something that doesn't happen as often, particularly for people of color, as it should, because we're kind of indoctrinated to be grateful for whatever little crumbs we get, right? And that whole notion of exceptionalism and everything, all the things that play into that. You had tapped into some books, Leslie. You said find a book to read. So what is a book or some sort of video? Is there a TED Talk or something that you all would recommend for the students? Anything in particular that kind of sticks out to you in your career development that helped you?
Yeah, I actually read over the break this book called Executive Presence. And it really talked about it. So both of my mentors are women. And they one of them shared with me that she was reading this book because there was this one particular university president that every time she saw her, she was just like, her mouth dropped. It was just like, every time she just walked in the room, it was all eyes, all attention on her. And she was like, I want that. Like, I want, when I walk in a room, folks notice me, like, I don't have to say a word and I just suck up all the energy in the room. And she read this book called Executive Presence, and it talked about all of the aspects that goes into it. Appearance is part of it, but there's also like a level of competence that go into it, and a level of like certain words to say, and not, and like being inclusive and using like we instead of I. Like it's a whole lot of stuff, and it's a really, really good book. I forgot the author of it, but that was one of the more beneficial pieces that I have read around like just showing up on, you know, in a career kind of situation.
Yeah, that's really good. I think, you know, if we're thinking about books, Shauna, one that's an easy read that I probably read every 6 months or so is Iceberg is Melting by John Cotter. It really is a book that talks about, it's like 50 pages or so. It talks about really how do you succeed in an environment with different cultures, understanding, you know, who is going to take these leadership roles, who's going to be a team player. And it just really helps me, as I work cross-functioning a lot. It really just helps me navigate teams a whole lot. And so that is one of those that, you know, I always recommend to people. Even when I was a executive director, it was a task. We read it as a team so we could better understand the team culture, and how we needed to change the culture in order to better serve the clients that we were serving at the time.
I'll add, I recently finished, and it took me a while, because I'm honestly not a great reader, and so I go in waves. So I recently finished Elaine Welteroth's book, More Than Enough. So if you don't know, Elaine was the youngest editor at Teen Vogue, and she was Black female. And so she, you know, she talks about her journey, like how she got there, a lot of different stories along the way, and then obviously her experiences there, and sort of even transitioning out of that role and sort of thinking about what's next. So it's a wonderful read, very easy read, more of like a fun book, but you can definitely get some great tidbits out of there as you're navigating your own careers and stuff.
Awesome. Got some real concrete tools for the future. And thank you to also Darwin for bringing up the aspect of career services. And I think that universities should really take heed to investing and developing their career services departments, because that is such a luxury that that folks don't even know that they have half the time. Even as alum, sometimes you can go back and career services will service you as an alumni. So don't lose sight of that, and be sure to take full advantage of that, especially when it comes to reviewing your resumes, because there are people who pay good money for that, for those keywords and all the razzle dazzle that makes your resume so appealing to companies.
I didn't mention this, and I don't know if we're going to talk about social media, but
Yes.
outside of books, I do feel that in 2023, students should invest in LinkedIn. I know I have benefited greatly from LinkedIn, and just by building a network, but also they have like really good career tips and all that on there as well, webinars and videos that you can check out. I kind of like that kind of community. I mean, it's some weirdos on there, but for the most part, like it's a good networking tool. I think if you're really kind of serious about breaking into industry and things like that, it will be a good tool to use.
Yeah, 100,000% on that. I mean, that's, as a recruiter, that is our number one tool usually to find candidates. And so there is actually a piece of LinkedIn that's called LinkedIn Recruiter that we have access to that allows us to search and mine the database that is LinkedIn. And so it shouldn't be thought of as a social media tool. It really should be thought of as a professional networking tool. And so you're building your community there too. You're starting to follow individuals, you're following companies, engage. So like, comments, you know, and provide to that community as well, not just, you know, receiving everything, but also providing your insights too, is what I would recommend.
Awesome. You touched on a really important point, Leslie, and that's kind of like social media. And I want to throw like a question in there, a follow-up question, because we live in a world where social media is everywhere. Everybody's got a brand, everybody's got a TikTok or whatever. And depending on the field that you're going into, you might want to be mindful of how you curate your brand, right? We're all playing the game of respectability politics, but you also want to work for a company that acknowledges that you're a whole person and you're not always going to be representing your company when you're making a post, right? But what are some tips that you have for folks in terms of like their presence on social media, some do's and don'ts as they navigate trying to find a job or moving up in the workplace? And who, Darwin, you're off mute, so by all means.
I always forget to mute myself.
It's okay.
Well, this is a tricky one, right? Because I'm an avid social media user, and so I think I'll give advice on how I do things. So this is really an I statement. So I'm on LinkedIn, although LinkedIn shouldn't be viewed as social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. The rest of those platforms, I don't have the bandwidth to learn. So Facebook is more so professional for me. So the things that I post on Facebook are going to be more professional. I have my colleagues, my family, and those sort of things. So I'm a little bit more tamed on Facebook. I tend to not really get into the political sort of mantra. I'd rather talk to my friends verbally about it versus like posting my thoughts, because I work in a company where there are a variety of opinions, and I sort of want to stay in the middle. And that's just me personally. But when we think about like Instagram and those sort of things, I keep my Instagram private. I can probably 90% of the people that I are friends with on Instagram, I know them, or I've had some sort of conversation with them outside of celebrities that I follow. And so my mom always told me years ago that whatever you put on the internet will always be there. So that is the mantra that I live. And it's not to say that I get every post and everything right, but if I want to run for political office or I want to advance in my career, you know, I have a friend who, and this is just a story, I have a friend who works in HR for a really, you know, large company. And they recently, you know, they have a morality clause in sort of their job contract, and someone's social media presence was not up to standard for the company, and they ultimately had to let that person go. So I'm always mindful of what I post, because I don't ever want to end up on Rachel's desk on a Monday morning because I posted something that is a direct conflict of the company. That's me personally. I think everyone should have. I think this is a very individualized sort of thing, but you have to make the decisions around social media that will ultimately help to advance your career or get you to where you want to be. And so that's just me. I'm sure it's very different for Leslie and Rachel, but yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm actually pretty similar. Like my Instagram is also private, my Facebook is also private, LinkedIn is open. That's again where I connect professionally and share things professionally. This is interesting because I'm in the student space, so I'm interacting with students where they do have more open Instagram accounts. You know, I've actually had a couple requests to follow me on Instagram. And so I'm like debating, like, do I open this up? Do I not? Do I want to start engaging with students? I follow some celebrities too. And I think the work that we do, we actually interact with a lot of high, you know, facing industry professionals that do have, you know, their face out there in public profiles and stuff like that. So I don't have the right answer either. I think whatever works for you, but you do have to think about like the impact that's going to have on the companies that you work for. And to Darwin's point, like that morality clause is interesting, right? So finding a company that aligns with your values is really important too. And so if you think, quote unquote, you're going to say something controversial, but it's actually in alignment with what the company values, or from a political stance, you know, it's the same political values as that company, great. But if it's not, maybe that's not the right company for you. So got to think about that too.
Yeah, I echo both what Darwin and Rachel said. And, you know, they're speaking from a place of you already in the company. Like if you're trying to get into the company and you know that your, you know, social media presence is a little bit more risque, then you definitely need to take advantage of those privacy settings so that folks doesn't have easy access. But, you know, I'll just be straight up with you. Like, if I can't get into your IG account because I'm not your friend, I know somebody that probably is, because, you know, it's mutual friends. I'll be like, you know, let me see. If I'm serious about wanting to hire you, like, I'm going to find out about you. And it's, for me, like, as a supervisor, like, I need to like you. Like, I know this is probably like anti, you know, HR policies and all that, but like, people have to really, there's more than just you being able to do the job. And if I looked at Chana's Facebook or Instagram, and she's very different from what I need in terms of respectful and you know, presentation and things like that, because what it shows is judgment. And I think that's the key here. Like, I don't care what you do, like, after 5, I really don't. And my team will tell you, like, I don't care what you post, what you do, that's your business. But I do need to be able to trust you to know that you can exercise good judgment. And if you are out here just willy-nilly, then that's a red flag. And so, you know, just be mindful of that, because there are some jobs that really police your social media, and then there are others that really don't. I'm lucky enough that I work in an organization where it's in direct alignment with my politics. So, you know, my boss is probably going off a little worse than I am on Facebook and Instagram. And so, you know, like, that's just because of the nature of the work that I do and where I work at. But I'm pretty sure if I was at Capital One, I would have to tame it down, you know. And so it's just one of those things where you have to just be very mindful of how you perform. And it's very interesting because, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we were not having this conversation. And so now this is like a real thing. And employers that tell you that they don't look at your stuff, they really do, y'all. So you have to be mindful of that.
That's so important. I think conversely, like, if someone were to apply at HRC and we find a bunch of homophobic comments on you, then it's like, oh, that's not a good look. So just being mindful, like you said, I think it was Darwin who said it, once it's on the internet, that's it. You know, it's encrypted. So on somebody's hard drive.
We gonna find it. We gonna find it.
Right. And, you know, respect, and especially for me, you know, because I do the social media stuff a lot too. And to your point, Rachel, finding a job that really is in alignment with your values and who you are as a person and the brand that you want to build is so crucial. And I'm grateful that I have a job where I could say whatever I want politically, and I pretty much know that it will fall in line. You know, of course, I use discernment. I don't just say whatever, but always putting thought. It actually charges me to put more thought into what I say before I say it. But also just being able to, like, express myself in other avenues, like through art, when I cosplay or when I'm modeling or something like that. And my coworkers encourage that. You know, they're like, oh my gosh, you look great. So just being in an environment like that is really important, and to be mindful that somebody is always watching. Mm-hmm. All right. This has been such a wonderful discussion. Okay, so I'll flip this. And Rachel, you had mentioned about the importance of community, right? And finding community. So how important is it for each of you to be in community among your colleagues, not just within your workplace, but beyond your place of work? Whoever wants, Rachel, we'll start with you since you.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, so I think for me, you spend a lot of time at work. So it is really important, you know, for you to find your people there, find your community there. And you can do that through, you know, getting involved in your employer resource groups, you know, and if your company doesn't have those, you know, maybe there's other ways that you can volunteer, meet people, you know, get involved in any other sort of leadership or mentorship programs that they might have or something like that. But it is really important. And I don't think I realized how important that probably was at the beginning of my career either. But again, the older I get, the smarter, wiser I get maybe. And, you know, I do feel like that is really important. And even beyond work, you know, and Shauna, this is where I'm like, are we talking about hanging out with people that you work with outside of work? Is that kind of where that question is going? Or
more so being in community with folks who can affirm and identify with your experiences, whether they are your coworkers or whether they may be colleagues who don't work at PBH. But if you want to talk about how you bond with your coworkers outside the workplace, I'm not going to stop you. I think that's cool.
Yeah, no, I think there are some lines there, I think. And it kind of depends, like as a supervisor, as a manager, you do have to kind of think about that. But yeah, I think, even finding, if you don't have the community in your workplace for whatever reason, finding peers that are at other, similar workplaces and similar functions that you can, bounce ideas off of, collaborate with, whatever that might be, that can help guide you through any, type of scenario that you might be experiencing at work, good or bad, otherwise, or can help you navigate, that salary conversation that we were talking about, and advocating for yourself and stuff like that too.
I think, and this may take this into a totally different direction, right? So one of the things, like I said, I've been in corporate for 5 years now. One of the things that I would say is just as advice, right, is I took my corporate job and I packed up and I moved from Atlanta to San Francisco, right? And so oftentimes when we're taking these jobs or when you're entering in corporate, it's probably not in the city where you went to school at, especially if it's an HBCUs or in those types of things. And so I remember being in San Francisco sort of the probably second week, and I was like, dang, I need to get my hair cut. And I had no sense of where to get my hair cut, and those types of things. And so when I think we also think about building community, right, is being able, when you start to check those boxes off, right, is it ERG or are there people that I can reach out to for the very simple things around where do I get my hair cut, where do I get my nails done at? I'm in suits. At that time, I was in suits very often. Like, what dry cleaners do you use? And that's when I think about community, is being able to navigate those very personal aspects of life that aren't necessary, that ultimately help us do our job, because if you show up and you look good, you're going to do your job good, right? But how do we navigate those sort of situations? So think about that when we're thinking about sort of that career, we often are moving. So that's a sense of community. I think, I don't necessarily hang out with all of my coworkers, but I work in an industry where I have friends who we've all matriculated to the company around the same time that we're friends with. And it's one of those things where, again, we hold ourselves accountable. We all hang out, we all may, go to a work event or something that's more personal, but we hold ourselves accountable. If something is happening, and I'm just being real, we may tap that friend on the shoulder and be like, hey, let's go back to the hotel, so that, again, there's nothing that jeopardizes our work job or jeopardizes our personal life. And so surround yourself with people, especially at work, who will tap you on the shoulder and say, whether it's like, hey, you need to get your stuff together at work or on a professional, in the professional setting or in the personal setting. I think the other thing is, and I'll toss it to Leslie, I think the other thing is, when we think about community, is figure out those professional networks that you can join. I pledge Sigma grad chapter, but I'm also, I've done work with 100 Black men. I'm on the board of Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington. So where are those other professional networks where you can join or tap into that will ultimately help to build your community, so that you're not necessarily relying on work and colleagues to build that sort of community?
Yeah, that's good. And I would just add one quick addendum to Darwin's thing. Be open to that type of redirection as well. Like, if somebody's tapping you on your shoulder, like, be open to that, because that shows care and concern. Because I've seen a lot of folks, respond very poorly to someone trying to engage them in like a redirection or whatever like that. I guess I would say, just taking a little bit back old school. When I first started at HRC, I was real big on asking for 15-minute coffees with folks. We work in DC, so there was coffee shops at every corner. And folks kind of appreciate that. One, you're getting out of the office. Two, you only ask for 15 minutes, so they're not kind of like, oh, what do you want to talk about, sort of thing. But three, it allows you to really kind of like not have to be so stuck up professional when you're in the office, you know, and you see a different side of folks. And I'm not saying go in and send out an all staff email saying like, I want to go to coffee with folks, but there may be some important players at your organization that you really want to kind of get to know and get to know their, you know, career journey or get some advice from them. And I'll just say another side piece, like folks love when you ask advice from them. Like that's just another little quick thing. Like when you ask folks for advice, people like that. And so you have to take it though. That's the flip side. Or you have to look, you know, act like you're at least taking it. But I would really suggest that just in terms of building a community around you. Like it can take some time, you know, when you're new at an organization or company to really build up that rapport with folks. But in an age where we are, you know, virtual or hybrid, like you could do that also virtually. Like just, hey, can we take a 15-minute? You may have a drink on your end, I'm gonna have a tea or coffee on my end, and let's just kind of do that. I think would be really helpful as you seek to build community with your colleagues.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you all so much. I want to give you all a chance to wrap up with one final question, and then also give you all the opportunity to share career opportunities where folks can apply to work for your company, and social media. Folks want to continue to follow you or be engaged with you or your organization. So what is some advice? What are some final thoughts or bits of advice you would give to your younger self? If you could talk to 1-year-old you and then share how we can find you or your organization.
Some advice I would give to like myself graduating from college is one, just be yourself, be authentic, right? I think we try to assimilate into certain things, and what has helped me is to always be myself, whether it's how I dress, whether it's you know, my innovative ideas and those types of things. Also, you're more than enough, right? If you're in the role or you get hired, they obviously value your opinion. So, you know, balance listening and talking, right? And then sort of like what I tell everybody, and it's very elementary, is learn the recipe to bake the cookies where you are before you go and start adding pecans or walnuts to the chocolate chip cookies. Learn the recipe. And then once you learn it and you do it well, then start to add your flavor to it. Because I think oftentimes we come in and we try to change things immediately, and we don't necessarily understand organizational culture. We don't have a good grasp on our job yet. And, you know, I think that is a downfall of a lot of individuals. So learn the recipe of your company and then make the changes that you want to make. And I think, was there something else I was supposed to add?
Just how folks can apply to work at Gilead, or how they can follow you. And
so I will give out my LinkedIn. It's Darwin Thompson on LinkedIn. And then our website is www.gilead.com. If you're interested in internships, I'm happy to connect you with our EUTR team, Early University and Talent Relations team, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn and send me a note.
Awesome. Rachel, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can go next. So I feel like, Chana, you mentioned this earlier, but the value of that connection, you know, that person can help you out immensely in your career. Whoever, you know, hopefully you have multiple connections, multiple mentors, even. I didn't even realize or really know what a mentor was when I was, you know, growing up and when I was in college. And so mentors can be professional, like formal, or they can also be informal. So I have a lot of informal mentors right now in my midst, but you know, just understanding the value of that connection, working that connection that you have, or that mentorship that you have, you know, can take you a long way. And then if you'd like to learn more about PVH, about our opportunities, our website is careers.pvh.com. And you're more than welcome to connect with me directly on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is just my first name and my last name, and it's Rachel, Rachael. So you've got to get that extra A in there to make sure you find me. But you're welcome to email me, connect with me if you do have any questions about internships or even full-time opportunities with PVH.
Yeah, that was really good. I just have a couple, like, first, if I was talking to my younger self, breathe. Like, it's going to be okay. Trust yourself. If it's for you, it's for you. Don't measure yourself up against other folks. That'll drive you nuts every time. And just trust the process. I think that has just really, that is real life advice that I really would give myself today, honestly. But certainly when I was graduating, like, you know, just it's okay. Like, just breathe. And I would also like to, before I say that, internships at HRC, jobs at HRC, feel free to go to hrc.org. There's a plethora of opportunities there. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say that today is Chana's birthday. And so I just wanted to wish her a happy birthday. You know, we got her working on her birthday, but it's okay. You know, that you got to do that sometime when you at work. So, but no, that would be the advice that I would give to my younger self for sure.
I really appreciate that. You all are so profound, and it's just been a joy to be in discussion with you all. It's an honor and a privilege to work for you, Leslie. It really is. I didn't even know you were a Sigma, Darwin, so we got to talk after this, because I'm a Delta and I'm like, hold up, you family. So now we got to have a whole other conversation about that. And it's just really an honor and a privilege to do this work. I never would have thought, if you asked me 5 years ago, where I would be. So if that's like all the advice that you gave about trusting the process and believing in yourself and finding mentors and all those things, it really culminates for me personally. And I echo that. And for all of our listeners, all of our watchers, all those students, it's going to be okay. I know that sometimes it seems like the world's on fire, but we're going to be all right, I promise. And thank you all so much for your time, for your energy and your dedication to this discussion. As again, feel free to look us up, hrc.org/HBCU. We also have a Facebook group. If you search HBCU LGBTQ, pretty easy to find. And you can follow me personally at CC the Geek. So thanks again, you all. This has been wonderful. Take care and have a great one.